right, well, we unfortunately don't have Lauren here today to kick things off, but I think we'll get started, and as other people may or may not be trickling in and out, we'll just keep rolling through it, and hopefully they'll get caught up along the way. So, a lot of familiar faces from the first talk, so welcome back. I'm glad that you enjoyed the first one and decided to give me another chance. For new faces here, my name is Sonny Abramson. I work for a tech consulting and software development company here in Charlottesville. And today's topic will be form follows function. So, first thing is, let's take a look at what we're going to be talking about today. First, we'll look at definitions of form and function and what it means in this context, before seeing how it applies to nature and animals, humans, biology. Next, we'll see how it carries through all the way into ways that we create things we use every day, before finally getting into the digital applications of form following function. Now, the fifth thing we do today is something I'm really excited for. By the end, you guys might hate me for it, but it's a really cool exercise we use in the real world to figure out form and functional features for products we create. Finally, after that, we'll have a little bit of wrap-up, as well as time for any sort of questions or just talking about anything else you would find interesting. So let's dive in. Form and function. What is it? Well, form is the way in which something is seen, experienced, or produced. Function, on the other hand, is the special purpose or activity for which an object is created. Now, this seems to fit pretty well together, so why am I up here talking, and what's the problem? Well, in the tech world especially, form and function oftentimes get confusing, and which one comes first and which one influences the other. So I have a quick video that will hopefully demonstrate how confusing it can be. And just so you know, in the video, form is UI and function is UX.
Today we know that chickens come from eggs, and eggs come from chickens. Then, when we venture back in time to establish how the first chicken laid the first egg, we get all confused figuring out where that chicken hatched from the previous egg before laying the first egg, to conclude that there was a chicken to lay the previous egg from the first egg that was laid by the first chicken. In the timeline of history, that's where the term BC comes from, like 200 BC. Historians might say 217 BC, which sounds more accurate, meaning 217 years before chicken, as in the first chicken. After that, it's AD, the abbreviation for Anno Domini. Anno means year in Latin, and Domini means of the egg. Interestingly enough, there is a direct correlation between the elucidation of the chicken and egg conundrum and the design of websites we like to use. Today we have a discipline called User Experience Design, which, just like BC, is abbreviated UX. UX design is the deliberate intent to make the experience of using a website enjoyable for you and me. So UX is like the chicken, and like the chicken lays an egg, UX spawns a user interface, abbreviated UI, which is the egg, Dominus in Latin. Here is where the UX, chicken, and the UI, egg, get just as confusing historically, because to you and me, the user experience is established after we navigate the user interface. We'll say, I like this site, or what the f***, what's going on here? This site sucks! That is called user feedback. Amongst professionals, that can also be passed off as a heuristic evaluation. Today, we are aware, if you've been paying any attention, that the design of the user interface we see, the egg, is the product of the design of the user experience, the chicken. But then to you and me, as users enjoying a website or yelling profanities at it, the user experience, the chicken, is the product of the user interface, the egg. And from our feedback is initiated the design of an improved user experience, so the egg hatches a chicken to lay a better egg, and it all starts over.
Whew. So, if you're anything like me, your head is probably spinning. Chickens, eggs, UX, UI, what does it all mean? Well, while this might not be a great video to learn history or Latin, it does do a pretty good job of explaining where form following function gets confusing and needs just a little bit of more explanation. So for that, I first want to attack, am I right? Let's see what's going on here. Are we good now? We're good. All right. So in order to explain form following function a little bit better, I want to take a look at how it influences animals, plants, humans. And to do that, I want to point out that form following function is the single most important aspect to an animal's survival. Now, up here I have a bunch of different animals, some plants, and living in a bunch of different environments. But I first want to draw your attention to these two up here. Both are the exact same species, a wolf. This upper right one, though, is an Arctic wolf. The one right next to it, an Arabian wolf. Now, an Arctic wolf is white and furry to match the function of blending in with snow and surviving the harsh temperatures of the Arctic. Meanwhile, the Arabian wolf, it has a much lighter coat, so its form matches the function of trying to stay a little bit warmer. Furthermore, the brown color meets the function of blending in with its sandy environment much better than a white coat would. These are the same species, but the function that the animal requires impacts what its form looks like. Another pretty impressive example of this is these two animals down here. Now, this one I know everyone knows is the giant panda. The one next to it, maybe not so much, but it's known as a red panda. These two animals aren't actually related. The giant panda is more like a bear, and the red panda is more like a ferret. But interestingly enough, they both share the same diet, bamboo. So their function to survive is to eat as much bamboo as possible. Their form has evolved to be the exact same over time. And by this, I mean that the red panda and the giant panda each have a very unique thumb that is adept at handling and stripping bamboo to eat. Now, they're not related, and yet they evolved the same way. More and more studies have shown that animals' evolutions will look more and more similar to match similar environments. So, that's great that we've looked at some animals and how form following function leads to survival. But humans take it one step further. We actually deliberately modify our form to meet cultural function. All right. We're going old school with that. So, around the world, humans have different meanings of what wealth, power, or beauty look like. And to match each culture, there are different forms. We have things like neck rings or lip plates, things that look very unique and maybe even bizarre to us, but to them, that's beautiful or powerful. Things like foot binding in China, where the standard was 3.5 inches for an adult human foot. That's about 3.5 inches. This was as big as their foot. Again, bizarre, different than what we're used to, but for them, that was beautiful. Finally, there's a Native American tribe that, in order to determine who is powerful amongst their group of Native Americans, would actually flatten the head of children up to a year after they were born. The babies' heads were bound between two wooden boards to make sure that their forehead was flat, as you can see in the image. This is something that sounds crazy to us, but to them it made a lot of sense, because the form of a flatter head meant the function of being a powerful and influential individual in their culture. So these are all really extreme examples, but let's dial it down a notch. Hats. They're another great example of how humans modify form to meet the function of where they live. Let's look at the Ushanka hat, which if anyone speaks Russian here, I'm probably butchering it, I'm sorry. But it has big ear flaps and is made of fur, similar to the Arctic wolf's coat. Now this helps people in Russia survive the harsh and brutal winters. If you take a look down here at the rice hat, though, seen across the Asian continent, you'll notice that the form is very different. And that's because it serves a different function. For the rice hat, it's really important to protect its wearer from the harsh sun or the downpours that happen during monsoon seasons. What's more, wearers of the rice hat can actually take the hat off and use it as a fan to cool themselves down. So, if I was a rice hat maker and I wanted to expand my rice hat empire, I might consider going to Russia. But it wouldn't work out too well for me because none of the functionality that the rice hat provides is needed in Russia. Now, hopefully you're starting to observe a little bit of a pattern. Environment impacts functional requirements. Functional requirements impact form. Cultural response impacts familiarity. And the most important thing is that familiarity impacts adoption. So to look more into this, I'm going to use a quote from Louis Sullivan. He was a famous architect in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And he said that all things in nature have a shape. That is to say, a form, an outward semblance, that tells us what they are. Now, Louis Sullivan was a huge proponent of form following function. But this didn't mean that his buildings weren't beautiful or ornately decorated. They oftentimes were. It was just that you could always tell what the building was meant to do simply by looking at its outward appearance. In terms of familiarity, it's been studied and shown that when we recognize certain stimuli, it actually elicits a positive reaction in our brain. So, all other things being equal, we prefer stimuli that we've seen before over novel ones. This is known as a mere exposure effect. So, over the next couple of slides, I'm going to have some images up here that are probably pretty foreign to you guys. And it's probably going to make you a little bit uncomfortable and want to reject what I'm showing you. First up, this elevator. I know if the door opened and I saw that, I would probably take the stairs. It looks uncomfortable. Who's being forced to stand in the back corner? It's just weird. I'm not used to it. Now, everyone loves cookies, right? But in milk, not orange juice. Exactly. We're uncomfortable by the sight of something that is unfamiliar. Now, in this case, that's probably actually pretty bad. But we don't actually have to taste it to know that that's probably something we want to avoid. What about bread that's sliced like this? How are you making a sandwich with that? If I saw this in the store, I would assume that it was a product defect and I definitely wouldn't buy it. Now, I'm about to show you one more example of form being unfamiliar to someone and therefore not meeting the proper function. And it's a rarely seen dance of attraction. So I want you guys to watch the determination, the persistence, and maybe how he's just not getting it right. Oh, it is painful to watch something like that. It really is. And as you can see, the function of gaining that girl's attention, that wasn't the right form. Maybe he should have just tried talking to her instead.
He did get her attention, though.
He might have gotten her attention, but she wanted to ignore him as much as she could. So this is all how humans influence their own form to gain acceptance and attention in culture and their location. But what about in things that we create? Well, I want to look at the chair. This is the most overlooked yet important example of form following function. Now, way back when, this was the original chair. People sat on the ground, logs, stones, anywhere that was out of harm's way. But then a group of people had an idea, the Egyptians. They said, what if we take someone who's important, our ruler, and raise him up off the ground? The form of the chair matched the function of signifying importance. Because if everyone's sitting on the ground and they have to look up at their leader, that instantly separates him from the rest of the group. Now, this is where the chair started, but over time it's become much more common. You all are sitting in chairs right now. So, there are many different forms of chair, from the Egyptian chair to the medieval Norwegian chair, the Renaissance Italian chair, all the way until the modern chairs that you see today. And while each one admittedly looks very different, you can always tell that it's supposed to be a chair. The form clearly matches the function of raising someone off the ground and providing a more comfortable seat for them. Charles Ames, a famous furniture designer, said that design is an expression of purpose, and it may, if it's good enough, later be judged as art. So this is very true, and once again I pulled together a couple of images to show examples. And as we go through the images, I want you guys to ask yourself, is it a sculpture that I can sit in, or a chair that's well sculpted? This first one. Now, that looks really cool, and I probably want something like that in my house or in a museum. But I wouldn't want to sit in it. I feel like my arms would fold awkwardly across myself just to keep them comfortable, and there's no way my head is fitting in that small gap at the top. So, great sculpture, maybe not a great chair. How about something like this? Now, at first glance, it looks better, but I'm pretty sure my arms don't bend that way. How am I supposed to use that as an armrest? Furthermore, the back, the slats of wood, as soon as I lean back, I know that that is causing all sorts of pain and discomfort. So, maybe better than the last one, but still not really meeting the function that I needed to. Now, this one meets function. That looks very comfortable, it looks soft, it looks like I could sit there for a while. But its form isn't great. It looks like someone forgot it in their basement for just a little bit too long, and maybe it smells a little bit. So, function, pretty good, but form, it misses a few marks. Now, how about this? That doesn't even come close to a chair. I don't know how that guy got up there or why they made him pretend that he was sleeping, but there is no way that's comfortable, and I know I would never try to get up in something like that. Great sculpture, not a chair. Finally, we get to this. Now that looks like a good chair. It looks comfortable, it looks soft, but its form is still elegant and classy to the point where you would want someone to see that in your home. That is a perfect example of how form can follow function while still being nice to look at. So, back to Louis Sullivan. He was such a big proponent in form follows function that he believes it applied everywhere you looked. So, he said, whether it be the sweeping eagle in his flight or the open apple blossom, the toiling workhorse, the blithe swan, the branching oak, the winding stream at its base, the drifting clouds over all the coursing sun, form ever follows function, and this is the law. Very poetic, maybe a little bit extreme, but pretty close to the truth. On the other side of things, you have Ambrose Bierce's Devil's Dictionary's definition of art. And basically, it's that art has no definition. And that is also true. Art is so emotionally tied to our reaction, and it's so subjective that you really can't give a proper definition for what should be considered as art. But in product innovation, purpose gives definition to art. In other words, function gives purpose to form. So now we've looked a little bit about how form follows function influences evolution, how it impacts culture, and how it affects things that we make for day-to-day life. But now it's time to look at how it impacts technology. Way back when, in the early days of computers and software, people were so impressed by the mere functionality of what all this new stuff could do that they really didn't care about the form. But guys, the form was really, really bad. I mean, look at this. How can anyone actually use this? And this all came to a head when Microsoft released Windows Vista back in 2007. This operating system achieved something known as software bloat. I say achieved, but this was not a good thing. Software bloat is when there's so much function and so little form that it renders the whole thing dysfunctional. Users either got got lost in all the different tools and capabilities of the system, or the system simply crashed under the weight of its own functionality. So Vista was hugely unsuccessful. And on the other hand, you had Mac. Steve Jobs' initial mission was simplicity. So Apple saw what was going on at Microsoft, and they said, we can capitalize on this. And they did. They launched an ad campaign that really positioned Windows, Microsoft, and PCs in general as clunky, difficult to use, and overall broken. Now, many of you guys will probably remember these commercials because they were incredibly impactful. I've pulled a couple of examples just to remind you what they were like and what they emphasized.
Oh, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC.
Well, after 5 years, Vista's finally here.
Whoopee for the whole entire world.
What's wrong?
Well, that isn't wrong. I mean, my new operating system arrives. I've had nothing but problems. I had to buy a new graphics card, get new memory. Now I can't even use some of my software and peripherals. I mean, let's face it, this party's a bust.
We should do this again sometime.
Sure, are you free in another 5 years?
Ooh, I have an all-day meeting in 5 years. How about 5 years in a day?
I got a strategy session that day. What about 5 years and 2 days?
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC.
Whoa, what happened to you, PC?
Kids happened. I was bought for a home. Now I have to make movies and blogs and listen to music every night. I'm crying myself to sleep mode.
Sorry about that.
You were made to stimulate 10-year-old brains with your iLife jazz. All I want to do is balance their checkbooks.
I don't think 10-year-olds have checkbooks.
No checkbooks, no inboxes, no employers, just wild imaginations. Oh, I have to go listen to some emo.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
Hello, I'm a PC, and I'm living with Vista.
Hi, PC.
I'm so proud of you for doing this, pal. This is great.
Thank you.
One day at a time, buddy.
Yep, you've taken the biggest step, and that's accepting that our operating system isn't working like it should.
I just wish they would resolve these problems and issues once and for all.
I wish I could tell you it's going to get easier. Well, I'm pleased to say I've been error-free for nearly a week.
Way to go.
Well, I'm pleased to say I've been error-free for nearly a week.
Okay.
Well, I'm pleased to say I've been error-free for nearly a week.
So hard to watch.
Can someone restart him, please?
Well, I'm pleased to say I've been error-free for nearly a week.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC, here with good news for anyone who's ever been frustrated by Vista.
Oh, you're fixing the problems.
No, I'm making them easier to live with my new line of calming teas. There's Crashy Time Chamomile, just the thing to soothe the nerves after a Vista-related crash. Or if Vista's making your applications run slow, there's Pomegranate Patience. Now, mornings are raspberry restart time for
that's
me.
great, PC.
Also
PC,
afternoons. But
We should move on.
yes, let's move on, Mac, to my line of Vista stress-relieving bath salts.
So as you can see in each of those commercials, Apple was really pointing out how Windows' bad form led to even worse function. But Microsoft learned its lesson, and eventually they got it so that their form aligned with their function. And they were actually able to hit back at Apple and focus in on how their versatility and function now way outperformed Apple's. So this series of commercials I'm about to show you was run by Intel, and really focused in on how Apple's simplicity had gone too far.
Hello, I'm Justin. Just a real person doing a real comparison between Mac and PC. Come on. Okay, PC. It's a laptop. Aha, tablet. Laptop, tablet, laptop. That's cool. Oh, and there's Intel. Nice. Okay. And now I got a laptop, and it's just a laptop. Oh, I'll also have to get a tablet, I guess. And a keypad. Oh, and a stylus. And a dongle? These are all PCs. Oh yeah, Intel. Nice. Whoa, my face just unlocked that. That's so cool. And I've never seen a screen like this before on a laptop. Wow. And let's see over here. So these are the newer Macs?
Yeah.
Okay, so gray and grayer. Okay, PC. Oh, cool, this whole thing's a touchscreen. Huh, and there's another one too, wow. All right, and now for Mac. Let's see. Oh, you've got a little bar here, a little baby one.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Oh, where's the mute button?
Here's what I found on how to cook mutton.
Oh no, I don't want to cook mutton. What even is mutton? So with the PC, I can plug in up to 3 monitors at the same time, but with Mac, I can plug in 1. Just 3, 1. Okay, yeah. Well, one's better than none.
So at this point, PC and Microsoft were able to make sure that their form was able to handle their function. But in these commercials, they still were very function focused. they presented how PCs can meet all of the needs that you have that Mac can't. So before we go any further, I want to ask you guys a quick question. What percent of the market do you think Mac dominates versus what percent of the market do you think PCs own? Any ideas?
Like today?
Yeah, today, now. Yeah.
With or without iPhones?
No, just Mac computers, no iPhones.
35%.
35% for Mac? All right. You're guessing 40? All right. 50?
45.
45, all right, awesome.
Probably at 20%.
20%?
I'm gonna go lower.
All right, yeah, so 20% is pretty close. PCs dominate 85% of the market, leaving just 15% to Mac.
Wow.
So this opens up the argument to something very similar to form and function. Need versus love. Now, in need versus love, functionality is need, and form is love. And based on that number I just shared with you, it seems pretty obvious that functionality wins, need wins. But that's not always the case, so let's take a closer look. Now, this is a graph of a bunch of companies. Some are loved, some are needed, some are both. In this upper left quadrant, you have companies that are loved, but really not needed. Things like Ferrari or Disney World. Fortnite's another good example. Down here, you have things that aren't needed and aren't particularly loved. GameStop, definitely not loved. And the bottom right, we have things that are needed, but their form is so nothing that they just can't be loved. And then finally, we have the top right. These are companies that are both needed, but also loved. Companies like iPhone, Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, Tesla, they've done a great job at providing needed functionality in a form that is easily loved. So all of these companies up here are tangible. For Chick-fil-A, you can smell and taste the food. For iPhones, you can feel the weight in your hand and see the sleekness of the design. For Tesla, well, you can sit in it and feel how comfortable the seats are or all the different tech that's in the car. But in the digital world, there's really only one way to interact with an app, and that's visually. So this makes it very hard to have a form that's lovable. People who are designing apps are now trying to get more creative and sometimes weird to differentiate from other competitors and gain that edge that's loved. But, well, that's all good. It needs to kind of stay in its place. For weird or different creative form, if it's something that's experience focused, like a video demonstrating a new product or an animation that congratulates you on a job well done in an app, that can be different. That's exciting and engaging. But if it's outcome focused, if it's function based, you can't really get that weird with it. In today's world, people give about 15 seconds to be able to understand an application or a website before they abandon it. So if you get too weird with your functionality, people won't use you. So while creative and impressive form is definitely needed, it should be used to enhance function, not hurt it. All this being said leads me to conclude that while form following function is certainly a rule that applies everywhere, specifically in the tech world, I can more accurately say this. Function follows human needs, and form follows human behavior. Now, the human behavior part is really important because if your form doesn't match and follow how humans interact, react, and behave, they'll never get to the function part. So, the balance between need and love, function and form, is truly very tricky and very important to hit. And that's what brings me to the exercise for today. Wise Wise. Now, the goal of Wise Wise is to be able to come up with the functional and form attributes for a product or an idea. But there's a little bit more to that. It's about exploring how powerful a simple question can be. And that question is why. So, what's the science behind it? Now, that does not look like science. That looks like 3 random images that I put on this slide. But stick with me, and by the end I think you'll understand where I'm coming from. First, let's talk about the weird melting clock. In our minds, past and future, they're really honestly the same thing. they're stored in the brain in the exact same location. So whether we're trying to recall a memory or look forward into the future, our brain goes to the same spot. This leads to the sloth. I hate to break it to you guys, but our brains are lazy. They don't want to do work. Evolutionarily, energy expenditure has always been bad. The less energy you can use, the higher your chances of survival are. So for our brain, it loves the fact that the past and the future are in the same spot. It can simply use the past to predict the future. And this works some of the time. When we're trying to come up with new ideas or create something that's never been done before, that sort of past predicated functionality really doesn't work. So that's where the light bulb comes in. We have to ask ourselves why to avoid falling into those habits of just simply using the past to determine the future. And if we ask ourselves why, then we'll find ourselves coming up with some pretty new and pretty unique ideas. So how is this game used? Well, in the tech world, it's really focused in 3 different ways. The first one, which is kind of like what we're going to be doing today, is internally. So when a client comes to a software consulting or any sort of software development company, if they're bringing forward a new idea or even something that just needs to be recycled and refreshed, it's really important that the company internally figures out the why behind the product. And yes, it's great to rely upon the person bringing that new piece of business to you, but it's really important to do it yourself and put in that hard work to make sure that you are always presenting your clients with a fresh new look on something that's been done before. The second usage is in user research initiatives. So oftentimes when a new idea is being pursued, user research is really important. Going out and finding people who would potentially use your application. So walking them through why's and getting to the heart of why they would use something like what you're trying to create is invaluable information for putting something together. Finally, stakeholders discovery session. Now, I'm talking about this one last because it's really in place of user research. You can't always hit the streets and find a whole bunch of people to talk to. So at that point, it's really important to talk to the stakeholder, the entrepreneur, the innovator, and make sure that they're constantly thinking about their idea and why it's important, why it will be successful. And if you can have them really get to the heart of that, chances are they'll hit on something pretty creative and pretty solid. So lastly, I want to talk about 3 levels of why. The first level of why that you'll see in why's is instinctual. It'll be really easy, almost a no-brainer, and you'll really like it. The second level, oftentimes is frustrating. You don't get why you can't just stick with the first answer. It seems like it's almost counterintuitive, but you're almost there. The third level is a little bit painful. I'm going to be honest. It can be extremely hard to get there. But once you do, you can be confident that you're at the final truth, the reason for being for the idea. And at the end of the day, that's really rewarding. So difficult, yes, but rewarding, absolutely. So before I get to today's prompt, I want to just walk you guys through a quick example. So the big idea is something to open a bottle of wine. The user, hipsters, aged 25 to 30. One of the functional attributes that something like this would need is that it's easy to use. Why? Well, I don't want to fumble with it and look stupid. But the deeper why is that it's a social thing. I want to be confident in front of my friends. Now, let's look over at a form, an example of an attribute for form. A trendy design. Why is that important? Well, I want to seem like someone who knows current trends. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll see the real reason behind that is you want to feel like you're the cool one among your group of friends. That's important to you. So you guys are going to come up with, I'm going to split you guys into 2 groups, and one group's going to work on function and the other's going to work on form. But you're going to come up with 5 attributes. And I'll help you guys, don't worry. But I want you to come up with 5 attributes for both function and form and try to figure out the why behind each one. In the end, we'll end up having something that I like to refer to as the why's why. The reason for being for the product. In this example, the reason that you need something to open a bottle of wine and it matches certain attributes is I'm a social person and I want to look cool and feel confident in front of my friends while opening a bottle of wine. It's really important to be able to go from something like simply opening a bottle of wine to figuring out why that's important to you and why there are certain attributes that have to fall in line with that idea. So, what's today's prompt? The big idea is a mobile app to help people spend smart and save. The age group? Gen Zs and millennials aged 18 to 30. Now, I'm going to be passing out the documents, and I see some of you guys looking a little bit scared. I promise I'll help you get through this, and hopefully it'll be rewarding in the end. So we'll make, let's see, we'll make this side function. So here you go. There are a couple of, you only need to do, fill out both of them. You don't have to fill out both of them with unique ideas. It's just one, but two of these, and then some prompts to help you guys just brainstorm and get some ideas going. And this side will be form. So again, you just have to fill out one of these. It was just in case multiple people wanted to be taking notes, and some ways to get you started. So if you guys want to come up, it looks like we're a little bit heavy on the function side, so if you can come up here to the form side, then that would be great.
All right, so this is an app to spend. All right.
And save.
App to spend smart and save. Reform.
So it's like the emotion, yeah.
And this is 18 to 30-year-olds. All right. Ready to write.
Put me in coach and ready. I mean,
Are there more?
Yeah.
Sorry.
We need these inspirational words. Inspirational words. Okay, this is good.
we have more of these, even though we only do
Come on, this is my goal, Catherine. Guys.
We got
So this says,
we got comment swag, it's fine.
Product attributes. All right.
So for sure, like it needs to be simple.
Simple. I think that's good. Minimalistic.
How many do we
word.
need?
5.
You guys need 5.
We need 5.
Well, I mean, simple
right.
might be good, except if it's very expensive. Then you want it to look very complicated, like where's your money going?
Simple or uncomplicated. I feel like all of those are.
Oh yeah.
Similar feelings. So.
People like,
Yeah, like simple and efficient.
it has to be practical
Sounds like something I would use.
because it has to work.
When I feel it's efficient, the same as like simple.
I think that efficient, yeah, I agree. I think simplicity would be
Okay, so intuitive.
As opposed to
Define quick.
Final one.
quick, as opposed to
Like
inserting it. It's not taking like a minute or two to actually do it, as opposed to like.
Well, I think quick is more fun. So, quick would be.
That's true. That's true.
Efficient would come
That's
back.
not fair.
Alright, this is good.
It has to be customizable, like an iPhone, right? So I just want to pick my own apps, which I think is important for me. So it's more customizable. Yeah, because no, it's not a cookie
Based on
cutter.
your
Like I buy the products,
can you
but
do
then
the
I
problem
want
yourself. But
the apps which I think I
that's
like, so it's customizable.
more
So why?
straightforward. There's more feeling behind that, but it's like
Makes you use it more.
that will not stress you
It makes it
out.
feel like
Yeah.
And then you had a different reason. But I think that makes you want to use it. Yeah.
And fear of embarrassment. So in case of in front of
Oh,
others,
yeah,
that
yeah.
you don't want to say, oh, I can open this and then.
Use it. So that's like.
at different stores.
Or
Embarrassment.
or have your friends like to be liked or something. Be admired to be liked by your friends. You know, if you're like, lowers your self-esteem.
That you might love to.
No, I like it. I like it.
I can get on the negatives.
All right. So what else do we need in terms of Oh, do you?
Yeah, I was just like, you
sorry.
I was like, don't try it.
Which is basically look at the Star Wars you guys came up with and see if there's any crossover and forms that follow function. And there really are. For function, you guys came up with things like low effort, which matches great for self-esteem. Why? Because you want to feel intelligent when you're using it. You want to feel confident when you're using something like this. So low effort allows you to do that. Personalization. Form independence. That's great. Personalization is the functionality, but why is that important? So you can feel truly independent in your own life. Like you don't need someone else to tell you how to live or what your interests are. Intuitive. Lines up perfectly with the form of self-efficacy, right? If it's easy to use, you'll feel like you can do it easily and efficiently. Goal-oriented leads to accomplished. If the app has a feeling around it where every time you open it, you feel accomplished, that'll probably help you achieve your goals at a higher rate, and vice versa. Finally, usability and acceptance. Now this one's a little bit more of a stretch, but if everyone around you is using something like this, but you can't figure it out, you feel like the odd guy out. You feel like there must be something wrong with the way that you're living or the way that you're thinking. So usability is really important to feel like you're an accepted part of the group. So that was the easy part that I had to do. I have a little bit of a harder part now. I have to come up with basically a product statement that takes all of your guys' thoughts and explains what this application is and what it can do. So hang with me, and I will do this as fast as I can. All right, so all of that work leads to what? Well, it leads to an app for 18 to 30-year-olds that is intuitive, goal-oriented, and personalized to help me spend smart and save while feeling independent, accomplished, and accepted.
Sweet.
That sounds like a pretty good app. I would use it. And now where you're really going to hate me. Why? Why is that statement important? What does that allow people to do? What does it allow them to feel?
Financial freedom.
Financial freedom. Good. That's perfect. What else? Why is something like this important? And why would it be successful?
Independence from their parents.
Independence from parents.
Marketing.
Definitely. What was that?
Why is that
Marketing.
Marketing?
Insurance independence.
Yeah.
This thing isn't usable unless it's sold and money's made off of it, and you have to apply a mission statement to what the thing is, what the product is.
Well, and it's like what matters to the demographic of who you're trying to sell the product or the app to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, yeah, we had a bunch of Star Words that basically matter to 18 to 30-year-olds. And so I'm hearing a lot of independence, a lot of freedom. So I think at the end of the day, the real wise why is because I'm a person who lives my own life. I want to feel independent. I want to feel free from parents and friends and other pressures, while also helping set up a better life through spending smart and saving. And that's the real why someone like a Gen Z or millennial would turn to a budgeting app like what you guys created. So that's pretty good. That's a great start for developing an app. And this is something that we walk people through all the time when they come to us with an idea. It's absolutely hard. This is not something that is usually done in a meeting. We'll have it spread out over weeks of user research and multiple meetings to figure out something like this. So you guys did a great job with it. Now, to wrap up, I want to challenge you guys to walk through life trying to pay attention to form and function. Where does it work? Where is something a little bit off? And why? If you guys can go through life asking yourself why and looking at things, trying to find the different perspective on everyday normal objects and interactions, then chances are you'll be finding some pretty unique, interesting perspectives that you might not have thought of before. So, form following function is all around us. And hopefully after tonight you guys understand a little bit better how it works together and how it impacts each and every one of us. So with that, if you have any other questions, I'd love to answer them, and thank you very much.